Mum, there's an absolute lunatic outside. Hey guys, Hal here coming at you with another movie review. Thank you for clicking on this video and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing The Woman in the Yard, which is the latest psychological horror release from Blumhouse. Now, this is your spoiler warning because we're going to be discussing major spoilers in this film. I just couldn't help myself. There's no way we can discuss this film without going into the major spoilers. So let that be your fair warning. So let's get to it. The Woman in the Yard centres on Ramona, portrayed by Danielle Deadwyler, a widowed mother recovering from a car accident that claimed her husband's life. Living in a remote farmhouse with her 2 children, Ramona grapples with grief, physical disability, and the challenges of single parenthood. Things take a sinister turn when a mysterious woman, draped in black, begins appearing in their yard, ominously stating, "Today's the day." As the woman's presence becomes more intrusive, Ramona's mental state deteriorates. Now, I did a trailer reaction for this film a few months back, and after the trailer, I was really excited to see this film. It looked like it was something straight up my street. So when I finally got the chance to pop this on and actually watch it, I had high expectations. Now, straight away, I'm not going to lie, this film is not going to be for everyone. It's a very, very slow burn. And actually there was at times where I thought, oh, this needs to kind of, pick itself up, because you are introduced to this family that are clearly struggling with grief after the loss of her husband, Ramona's husband, in this car accident. And you can see that she's struggling to get out of bed. She's watching the same videos of her husband over and over again, and quite clearly struggling with depression. And you see that her kids, she's got a teenage son and then a younger daughter that are just trying to crack on in this farmhouse that they've tried to renovate since moving in. But obviously that's come to a massive halt after the loss of her husband. So you can see them trying to get on with life, and you've got the teenage son really trying to make things better for his mum and his sister by making breakfast and really struggling through. Now you can see that she's not paid any bills, so they've got no electric, they've got no food in the house. He's managing just to scrimp everything together just to get something going for them. And it really is quite slow, the way that it builds up, just to really get that feeling that they're really struggling. And I'd like to say that it really picks up then when the woman in the yard finally appears, but it doesn't. It's very slow and symbolic, and it doesn't feed you any real easy answers. As the woman's presence becomes more invasive on this farmhouse, Ramona's mental state seriously starts to deteriorate. And to be honest, so does her relationship with her kids. That's kind of what this story is all about. There's a slight secret that's being kept from her kids, and it's quite clear to see. The woman in the veil says to Ramona, when Ramona goes to confront her out in the yard, she says to her, "Today's the day." And then when she finally actually gets to speak with the son, who goes out to confront her with a gun because they finally have had enough of her, encroaching on their space, she says, "Your mother's lying." And it's strange to see that this woman in the veil, who's very mysterious and often works through shadows, and it's very supernatural in places. It's strange to then see her unveil herself and speak with the son, and she can she'll touch and caress the wind chime, but only with her shadows. And it's strange to see how she comes across in this story. Now, because throughout this story, we are to believe that actually David, who was the husband, was actually driving this car when they got into this fatal accident. The picks up when the woman in the yard tells the son that your mother's lying about something. And when he then goes and confronts her about it to find out what's actually, been happening, because he always has thought that his mum's not telling him something about who this woman is in the yard. So there's a pivotal twist that you find out that actually Ramona was driving the car rather than her husband. And it was actually due to her fault. It shows like this flashback, and she looks in the rearview mirror, and you see this woman in the yard in the background, in the rearview mirror, that causes her to, just swerve off the road and, ultimately kill her husband. And that's one of the main twists in this film, is that she was actually driving this car. So this revelation really does intensify her guilt and self-blame. And because that you see this flashback, and you know that actually Ramona's seen this woman in the yard in the rearview mirror of the car, you start to figure out that actually this woman in the yard is the manifestation of Ramona's depression and guilt, and her then turning up on the yard and slowly getting closer to the house is literally her depression and grief closing in on her. She is the suicidal ideation and the physical embodiment of her internal struggle. Now, after some pretty mediocre supernatural events with Ramona and her kids trying to avoid the shadows of this woman in the yard who finally feels like she's crept into the house, is where I really now want to talk about spoilers, and pretty much the only reason I really wanted to do this video, because up to this point I thought the film was very meh, it was nothing particularly special, but it was from this point onwards where it made me feel uncomfortable, puzzled, and then ultimately in the end really unsure about how I felt about this film. So when you finally kind of get the gist that the woman in the yard is literally just a manifestation of the depression and guilt that is literally on Ramona's shoulder, there's a scene where they have this quiet moment where Ramona's sat on the bed in tears, and the woman in the yard is explaining to her, this is what you've been asking for. This is what you wake up every day and you say, give me strength. And you're not praying to a higher being to help you get through the day. You're praying, or you're requesting to give me strength to end it all. And straight away I started to feel a bit uncomfortable, because I thought that was a strange way of looking at things. And I thought it was very, very dark tonally. And I can understand that people that have suffered with depression will probably, this is how those dark thoughts will creep in. And that's what it will, start to sound like to you, that you're asking for the strength to end it all and to leave your kids behind. And it's just something very, very dark. And it was even uncomfortable to listen to. And the woman in the yard then starts to go over to the photo frames that are on the wall, and say, look, if you were to do this today, this is what will happen to your kids. And the kids in the pictures seem to live prosperous and happy lives without her. Now, I can totally understand that sometimes this is how, as I say, people with grief and depression will feel, but it felt such a dark and moody way of presenting a film. So I started to feel very uneasy straight away. And then I'd like to think that actually, she's going to start fighting this being off, and we're going to start seeing a happier side of things. But it just gets worse from here. So in the climax, Ramona eventually sends her children away for their safety, and prepares herself to commit suicide with the help of this veiled woman. So the next thing you know, we're in the loft. Ramona sits herself on this chair. she's got this shotgun, and there's this very horrible and uncomfortable, like it feels very seductive that this woman in black is kind of guiding this shotgun under the chin of Ramona, and really kind of, as I say, it's very seductive, and she's kind of caressing this shotgun and putting it under her chin. It made me feel horrible watching this part. It was very strange. It wasn't graphic in any particular way, but it felt so strange to see this figure kind of making her put this gun towards her chin and kind of talking her into doing it. And then you kind of see then the woman in black, kind of her shadow kind of goes inside Ramona and kind of takes over her. And then you kind of see Ramona kind of look at the stuffed toy that her kid gave her on the floor, and you're thinking, please let that convince you. You know, surely she's not going to do this. She's got these beautiful kids. She's let them go. And you can see her looking at the toy over in the distance, and you're thinking, yes, come on, she's smiling at it. And then it goes black. So you're hoping that this moment of clarity, which is sparked by a stuffed toy, is going to really pull her back from the brink. So after a moment or two of you wondering whether she's gone through with it or not, you know, there's this little lull in the film where you're kind of thinking, please, I really hope she's not gone through with it. And then you can hear then her kids arrive, and she's then ultimately reunited with them. You see the kids run onto the drive, and then you see her like hobbling out then on her crutches, and you're thinking, yes, she didn't go through with it. And you're like, right, I can live with that. You know, if the film ends now, happy days. But then you start to realise it's not quite as it seems, because the house that was, halfway through being renovated is now looking pretty fresh and clean, and the electric is working, all the lights come back on. And you're thinking to yourself, well, there's no possible way she's paid the bills in that time. Then you see that the house has been named, which has kind of been like a little subtle theme throughout. They were always wondering what they should call the house, and the house has got a name now. And then they pan away from the family of going into the house, because you're thinking, oh, that's the happy ending. Like, roll credits, roll credits, roll credits. And then it pans into the window onto a painting. And you can see a picture that kind of looks like the woman that was in the yard, but also a mix of Ramona and her. And you're thinking, well, that would make sense if she's painted that, because it's, a kind of mixture of herself and what she kind of saw as her depression. You understood that. And I was like, okay, well, that's a weird ending, but not, it'll be fine. Then it pans down, and then into the bottom right-hand corner of this painting, it's got Ramona, but in reverse. And it's not quite as you would spell the name out on a painting. And throughout this film, there's been scenes and hallucinations where Ramona has been seeing things in mirror form. And these things that she's been seeing are not as they seem. And it gives off this real ambiguous ending that actually, is all this not real? And did she actually go through with it? And it left me feeling absolutely gutted at the end. Now, I know that this film is a horror film. It's a psychological horror film. And up till this point, I wasn't really that bothered. But the ending of this film made me feel like I'd absolutely been pulled through a hedge backwards. So this film and this ending is really left open to interpretation. So my interpretation of this ending might not be the same as what yours is. I know it's definitely sparked a lot of conversations online, and I was straight to the review videos online after I watched this, but I needed to get this off my chest. I usually kind of have a little bit of a format to these videos that I do, but I've just gone on here and waffled about it because there's so much stuff that was just so messy and not enjoyable really as a film. Yes, I like discussing films once they're finished, but this one was, it felt grim and dirty. So I'd love to hear what all you guys think. So The Woman in the Yard delves into themes of grief, guilt, and mental illness. It uses supernatural elements as metaphors for Ramona's grief and depression. The veiled woman represents darkness that can consume any of us if left unaddressed. The film has a haunting narrative that blurs the lines between reality and delusion and makes us viewers deal with some uncomfortable emotions. I certainly did. Now, this film is not for everyone, but because of its complex themes and the way it looks into depression and grief, certainly does make it stand out in the psychological horror genre. Would I be racing to go watch this one anytime soon? I very much doubt it. But am I glad that I've seen it? 100%. I will, I think, always remember the ending to this film. Not in, in a good way, but I certainly will remember it. And some will argue that, well, that's what you signed up for. It's a horror film. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? And I'd have to agree. Yeah, it made me feel uncomfortable. So, 10 out of 10 for that. Was it an enjoyable watch? Not really. No, I don't think, as I say, I don't think I'll run back to watching it anytime soon. But either way, it made me want to do this video and chat on about it. So anyway, I really do hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If so, please let me know what you think about this film. I'd really like to get a discussion going because it's just absolutely madness, really. So yeah, please like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, because when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious